If I get a job offer now,
Hit delete before you know what it
Hello, good afternoon. Hope you guys are ready to get started.
You bet.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Phoenix chapter 14? 014. Sorry, I almost said the Miami 56. We stand to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stand to the nation.
please pray with me according to your own beliefs. Lord, you have called upon us to be guardians of a nation founded on your principles. Whatever our tasks as security force men and women, we do them to serve you and our nation. We are proud to accept the responsibility of this high calling. We dedicate ourselves to our vocation and ask for guidance and courage in aiding our people to live with dignity, in safety, and in peace. We know that true security comes from your presence. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I just want to thank everyone. I know we did a last minute change in the venue, so I appreciate everyone that's come out. And I don't know the parking. We'll get your feedback later because the actual space is nice. Just don't know how the parking is, so we'll get your feedback later. And we'll either go back to the regular place or maybe come back here for the next meeting. My name is Raphael. I'm the chairperson for the chapter. I wanted to thank Wayne Black for flying out from Miami to speak to us about international affairs and how it's affecting us locally. Right now, I guess before we get started, if we could just do a quick roundtable introduction. Jay, if you want to get started?
My name is Jay Leonard. I'm the chapter secretary. I work with
Stephanie Six, chapter vice chair.
Don Hesselbrock, CPP, past chapter president or chairman, and also retired.
Dave Toon, CPP, past chair, past practically everything in there, and past International Awards Committee. It's the first year I've been on the International Awards Committee. And I'm with Enterprise Security, not retired yet.
Jordan Cody, CPP. I will never be retired. What am I doing? I'm with Cigna Health, and I am the regional vice president.
Hello, Chris Armenta. I'm Victim Services at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office.
Bill Schultz, Arizona Off-Duty Specialist.
Diana Zellers, president of Hope Security Guard Services.
Brad Zellers works for Diana Zellers. And I've been retired for a long time.
You got stuck.
I Scott RVP for technical security for Jason.
Robert Brzal, CPP, and where's my boss? Oh, she's over there.
Stephen Fan, Code 4 Specialist, regulation, consulting, and training.
Lisa Miller, past chair, and I went to USL Security.
Jeffrey Varda, CBP, Cox Enterprise, Southwest Virginia.
Allie Campbell, Trust and Safety, Turo.
Carlos Gobeo, CBP, Barwell.
Jared Curtis. I'm Carlos's right hand man. Garwell.
No, not really.
Jason Maddox, Public Service.
And Alan Genentech. Hi, I'm Terry Donnelly, CPP. I'm with Wells Fargo for another week. And I retire, and I'm your assistant regional vice president.
So soon you'll be sitting up here.
We're studying for the CPP right now, and currently in between CPP opportunities. I'm Brian Bachman, Robotic Assistance Devices. This is my first meeting, so I'm glad to be here and excited to meet everybody.
Wasabi Cloud Storage, and I'm a newer member of this chapter, so pleasure to be involved.
Hi, Brian Dolly, Director of Sales for the Southwest Region for Allied.
Stephanie Jones, Allied Universal.
Good afternoon, Scott Kierduff, USAA here in Phoenix, and Don, you'll be happy to hear me say this for the first time, CPP.
Mike Hines for the Desert Financial Corporate Security Division and current ASIS Phoenix Web.
I think the ASIS Security 101 technology chair.
AJ Gullen, Security 101.
We'll get to know Wayne Black shortly. So I guess before we get started with past events and future events, there are some open spots available for the chair position. I know Steph wanted to talk about it.
So I left the sheet at the front. Some of you have grabbed it already. We put the most important positions that we're looking for on the board. Not too much of a time commitment. Obviously, help you with anything you need, but I feel free to get involved as either as a chair or on a committee. Definitely need your help. So everyone that you need to reach out to is on there. Please get involved.
Yeah, no, we have a lot going on in terms of tours that are coming up. We have the golf tournament, where I'm sure Mike Anderson he's chairing that committee. I'm sure he'd be happy to have any help that he can get. Southwest Security Conference, that's another one where we're doing a little bit of a reset on the timeline. Last time was in November. We're going to do it in early part of 2023. So we don't have the exact date yet, but we are looking for committee members to get that going. Was there any other? Leo, I know Bootsy's not here, but I'm sure she would be happy to get any help with that as well. Once again, as always, just thank you to our sponsors. We can't speak highly enough of you guys, and we appreciate everything. So as everyone has probably noticed, we've been doing member spotlights, right? So in March, it was Jason Maddox, and last month, or is it this, we're still in April, is Gary Lightfoot. So we want to keep that going, just kind of recognize everyone that's in the security industry, talk about what they've done for the chapter, in their careers, things that are just relevant to what we do every day. So if anyone wants to nominate someone, let us know, and we'll shoot that out as well. We've had a couple of events. First of all, I guess, well, Nick isn't here, but we had a CPP course that went very well. Not sure of the results. Have you heard anything about anyone passing or not passing?
They're going to let us know when they take the exam.
Okay, so Nick hosted it at his site. There were about 7 or 8 people there, folks that were there once a week, just studying, and we wish them luck. But it was a really good event, and I know they did very well in the course. We had our shooting event, which was member engagement. That right there is Mike Galante aiming for someone that he's mad at, and that was another event that we were there for a couple of hours just hanging out. That was a nice time. For the law enforcement appreciation, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend that because I had a security conference. But Danielle, okay, do you want to speak? Were you there? Okay, so when Danielle gets back, she's purchasing the parking, but she'll be back and talk about that a little bit. I know it went very well. Our upcoming events, we have a tour of Glendale PD, the crime center. That's coming up next month. I'm looking forward to that. That one is capped at 20. So the way that is, it's about an hour in total. 30 minutes, one tour with 10 people, another 30 minutes in the second half for another tour. I'll get additional information with the address and everything there. I haven't received that yet either, but we're going to get that information out. But once again, if that's something you're interested in joining, sign up so that we can make sure you get a spot. Then we have this gentleman here who's going to be doing a training for de-escalation. Do you remember his name?
Dana.
I'm sorry?
Dana.
Dana.
Got a lot of letters.
Thank you. Yeah. So this one, I know he does really interesting training. We saw a little bit of on Teams where he goes through this de-escalation process, and this is something that We don't know if it's going to make the AC Biltmore yet, but if it's, we'll shoot that information out as well. But that's another one that we're probably not going to want to miss.
Really good.
Yeah, really good. Good. And then Jay will speak about this.
Yeah, so this event is a little different. We didn't go out and find this. They came to us. What it is it's Interface Phoenix. It's put on by a company called F2F Events. Has anybody heard of it before? Yeah.
It's mostly, it's good you guys do it, because mostly it's an IT cyber event, so this is what's fantastic. Great event, probably 90 vendors normally.
Cyber is becoming extremely relevant in our day-to-day. So
if you want to do it, I recommend it big time.
Yep, absolutely. We've been invited. They made it free for all ASIS members. So it's in July at Kirkland. The registration for it will be on the website, so you can go to the website and register, just like you do for our meetings.
we're probably going to get a table there. So if anyone wants to join us at the table, that's something that feel free to let myself, Stephanie, Danielle, or Jay know, and we'll make sure to accommodate that. Once again, it's any topics, any speakers, feel free to let us know, and we'll get that on the schedule. So again, I didn't want to take up too much time with the business here, but Wayne Black is going to speak for about 40 minutes. Wayne Black, just to read his bio, he's got more than 40 years of professional security experience in both the public and private sectors. For more than a decade, Mr. Black was the security advisor, PSD lead for the former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld at the Rumsfeld Foundation. Mr. Black routinely provides detailed threat assessments for schools, churches, synagogues, hospitals, and other public facilities. He has personally supervised protection details and special threat assignments in the United States, Central Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and South America. As a contractor of the Department of Homeland Security after the events of 9/11, Mr. Black supervised the Red Team conducting threat assessments at designated national security events. During the first Gulf War, he designed and managed an accelerated security clearance program for the U.S. Department of Energy. He also trained DOE officials in security operations and personal protection. So with that being said, welcome Wayne Black.
No one has ever changed the venue at the last minute to try to get rid of me. But I found it anyway. I'm here basically to make you think about some things. We're all in the same business, right? I do assessments and consulting, and we've just come out of, I think we've come out of COVID. It's been crazy. I don't know what it's done to your business, but it's made mine just absolutely nuts. Secretary Rumsfeld in briefings used to say, there are things we know and things we don't know. So there are known knowns, and I don't know if you remember those press conferences, but he would use that at the Pentagon. He said, look, you guys have a failure of imagination. You didn't imagine, nobody imagined Pearl Harbor. We didn't imagine 9/11. And that's why we're in sort of a jam from time to time. There are things that we know, like we know that there's a meeting here today and we're going to go home tonight. There are things that we know that we don't know. And those are the risky things like, is my flight going to be canceled? Or we know that there's going to be another terrorist attack. We just don't know when, right? We know that there's going to be another school shooting, 100%. Well, we just don't know when. Or what are we doing? What are we doing to plan for that? And then the worst one is the unknown unknowns. There are things that we don't know that we don't know. And those are the ones that he used to say that would always get you. But look what's happened since the last time I was out here with COVID and everything. Afghanistan, how does that affect us? How does Afghanistan affect us? It's been almost a year. This August, it'll be a year since we, the United States, pulled out of Afghanistan. I want you to know, this is not going to be a political speech. I'm not going to talk one way or the other. I'm just going to talk about facts. But I'm not running for office, and I cannot be fired, which means I can tell you the truth. So I'm just going to tell you the truth. So I say we surrendered Afghanistan to China, probably. Why did we do that? Who knows why? But what's the result? $80 billion in equipment that the people that blew up the World Trade Center are now selling across the world. But what else is in Afghanistan that affects you? Lithium. Lithium.
A lot of it.
Yeah, big time. Chips, uranium, titanium. That affects you directly. What's in Ukraine that affects you? Lithium, titanium, uranium, our fertilizers for our wheat. 80% of it comes from the Ukraine. Back to Afghanistan, we put 100,000 what I call unsubs, unknown persons, on planes. We said, well, there's a couple hundred American citizens over there, and they may or may not want to leave. Remember those things? We put 100,000 people on a plane. We don't know who they are. They're here, someplace, trying to assimilate. We don't know who they are. How does it affect you? They may apply for a job. We didn't vet them. Nobody vetted them because they have no ID. They made things up. The only thing they had when they got here was an iPhone 12. So that affects you. Who are those guys? Remember in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that movie? I don't know if some of you aren't old enough to remember it, but they're getting surrounded by Mexicans. There's like 100,000 in this war, and they're shooting. There's like the Alamo situation, and Butch leans over and goes, "Who are those guys?" Well, we don't know who those guys are. The border affects you here. The border is totally out of control here, right? Here in Texas, there are the people that are caught. People on the terrorist watch list every day. Those people, by the way, from Syria, I want to call Congress and tell them that those people from Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Iran are not coming to Arizona and Florida and Texas to pick strawberries. And they're not coming to assimilate. They're coming to get together to do another 9/11 or worse. So I mean, that's just going to happen. How does it affect you? Every time there's an attack, like in Philadelphia or in the synagogue or around this country, we get calls. Hopefully you get calls, right? People panic. So there's that, oh, what are we going to do about security? And then if you don't get to them right away, then it's, whew, it didn't happen to me. So I'm here to talk about what is your plan. How do you recover if something happens to you? Something happens to your client. You know, a person manager has a plan. They got a 30-second plan. They say, I'm going to steal that person, I'm going to run around the corner. A bank robber might have a 2 or 3 week plan. A terrorist might have an 8-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. If your plan is better, you win. If your plan's not better, you lose. It's as simple as that. And guess what? They only have to be right once. So we can't have a failure of imagination. So I tell you that when you talk to your clients. When I talk to my clients, I always think, what's my advice? And I typically try to give them advice in writing. And as a consultant, I'm sort of like a translator, right? I'm translating between the vendor, the guard service about post orders, or the integrator about cameras and what does this mean, and can we see what we see from where we want to put the camera. I'm sort of a translator, but I always try to put something in writing, not to embarrass them, but to let them know that they need to have a plan. If you ever go to a client, if you're an integrator and you go to a client's place and they go, okay, we've got $50,000 to spend. This is a 500,000 square foot building, and we want to protect it with cameras. We've got $50,000 to spend, and we want software, and we want to have access control. You know what I tell them? Give me, go to the local gas station here in Phoenix, give me $10 worth of gas because I'm driving to New York. You can't get there from here. So I guess it affects sales. But at the end of the day, if something happens in your company, who owns it? Who owns it? If you're the owner of the company, who owns it? Who eats it? Do you have an emergency response plan, for example? What is your plan as you're building where you work? Do you have an ERP? And if you don't, why not? And who eats it? And I mean that. Who civilly and morally and maybe every other way legally eats it? Who owns it if you don't have the plan? So I'm trying to make you think about, geez, what are we doing? Hopefully you have how many have an ERP plan where they work, an emergency response plan? Okay, not many hands went up. So what do we do then? So people talk about active shooter. It's really an active threat, and that means anything that's happening now could be an active threat. Okay, so you put all these things together. Got 100,000 bad guys, we don't know who they are. You have all the gotaways from the border. That's between 5 and 20,000 per day now. Conservative estimates. Gotaways. What are they doing? Where are they? Well, you just have to watch the news to see where they are. A lot of them are coming back. They're child rapists, all kinds of bad guys. And if they go to a city, a big crime city, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, what else? St. Louis. With that bond thing, they're going to be back out on the street. How does that affect you? How many saw the thing in Atlanta yesterday where the security guard got shot in the back of the head? Guy's getting gas. He's got a security outfit on. He's getting gas in his car. Somebody comes up and just kills him. And the bystanders, here's where we are in the country. The bystanders robbed him. They robbed his dead body. They just arrested the person a couple hours ago, so at least they got that guy. But so that's what we're dealing with in the business. And how do we help people? I guess that's something for you to think about. I'd go home tonight and think about this. Do I have an emergency response plan? Do we have a plan? Do we know what we're going to do? What are the negative cascading effects of something happening to my business? If I'm a guard service and one of my guards shoots somebody, what's the plan? Who's going to talk to the press? Who's going to get on camera live at 5 and talk about it? And what are you going to say? And is he right? Is he wrong? Are you going to take a position? Okay, so if something happens in the media, you know what we say? It's spin or be spun. If you don't have a plan and you wait till somebody else spins it, and you can't stand up there and say no comment, they would love that. And you can't turn and walk away. That's a 60 Minutes deal, you know. They love that shot of it. No comment, and they run away. That means they, whoever it is, can fill that space. So they have like a minute and a half, the producer says. You can fill the space. You can stand there and talk for a minute and a half. And that defeats them. You know what I mean? So you can say, I used to say this when I worked for Janet Reno. We would arrest a judge. And they'd have somebody stand up, and a lot of times I did it. And I'd say, well, more arrests are expected. After conducting a lengthy investigation, we've come to the conclusion that we wanted to arrest this judge. And I just went on and on and on about public records. But I filled up the space. We had to fill up the space. So that's something for you to think about. Again, back to your plan. What is your plan? What are you going to do about it? So all these things, I submit to you that all these international events are affecting us, and you should watch that. The no more COVID blocking, sending people back on the border, if they keep doing that, the border is going to explode. I think it's exploding now. It's going to go crazy. Border Patrol is 80% of Border Patrol people are doing administrative duties now, just to process all these people. There's nobody on the border. Texas DPS is there. I don't know for sure what Arizona's doing. But the border's a mess. And for sure, bad guys are coming across the border. So how does that affect you? Do they apply for a job at your place? Have you had that happen? Somebody sees me dry lips over hand me water. How many have had people apply for jobs that are not who they say they are? No? Anybody? A couple. Yes, sir.
We didn't have anybody applying for a job in the company, but with a third-party contractor coming in for cleaning services, we detected, a fake driver's license. He was, working with law enforcement. He was illegal.
Yep.
Undocumented.
So if you're a guard service, for example, and you're servicing a building, that's something you can ask them. Look, we're going to secure the building, but what about the cleaning service? Do you make them give you a background check on these people? Who are they? The margins on cleaning business is so small. So they're paying them, what, $8 an hour or something like that, billing at 10, whatever it is. They're not going to do a background check on them. If they do a background check on them, how many use these out-of-state background companies like in Michigan or in California that go back 7 years? What about that? I mean, think about it, 7 years. So the guy that has a clean background in 7 years is going to be clean because he just got out of prison. He's been in prison for 10 years. So he's going to be clean. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I see those backgrounds all the time. I said the background should go back all the way. And by the way, if you ever get an employee that says, employed by the state of Georgia, you know what that means. The prisons in Georgia will verify that they've been employed there. We just saw that the other day. So it goes back to the who are those guys. So again, if you have a guard service specialist, who's going to eat it? Are you going to give that hot potato to the building manager somehow, to your client, and they'll appreciate it and have a good talk with them. So here, what about the cleaning service? You want us to protect the building, but what about those other guys? And what about if you're an integrator? What about selling badges, Prox cards, access control? When I red team a building, you know what I do? If I see a building that has a badge, like show us your badge, show his badge, most people don't put anything on the back of it. They put the name and something on the front, and they put the company logo, which is really cool, for when they lose it at a bar, the guy next to him at the bar can use it to get into the company because they know where to go. So we just take a plain badge, nothing on it, flip it over, because half the people going through the front door have a flipped over badge because of the wind. We wear a suit, we wave at the person, we tailgate right in, and we're in. So if we're going to do an assessment, when I meet the president of the company, I'm sitting at his desk in the morning when he comes in. And he says, who are you? I said, well, I'm the guy you just hired to see if the building was secure. And here's my badge. Clean on both sides. When we were doing that for Homeland Security, we got into plutonium sites and military bases all over the Middle East doing the same thing. So it depends on the attitude. So again, it goes back to, what is your plan? Are you planning for that? Can you plan for that? So not many had an emergency response plan in writing. It doesn't need to be a big one. It can be 20 or 30 pages, but what do? Who do they contact? How many, you guys have guard services, right? How many you have post orders, right? Okay, it's the same thing. So the post orders, you work out with the client, right? This happens, you're going to guard these doors, you're going to open at this hour, whatever it is. And if there's an emergency, you call these people. Well, your company should have the same plan. What if there's an active threat? How many have armed? Do you have armed guards here? You have armed guards. Okay. So how often do the armed guards train?
Above and beyond what DPS requires.
Yeah.
That's my line.
Yeah. So just think, if they're required to qualify once a year, what if you said, we're going to qualify quarterly? Churches are doing that. Qualify quarterly. You could use that as a sales technique. You could say, well, the state says once a year, and the police department qualifies maybe once or twice a year, but our people, because of our commitment to you, qualify every quarter. And then hopefully then if you have an armed guard, you've got a plan. Here's when you can shoot, the use of force, matrix, all that stuff, you have to have that. If you have the plan, and they go outside the plan, your defense is they went outside the scope of our policy. If you don't have the plan, back to my question, who owns it, who eats it? You do. Well, but at your company, or wherever you work, are you the person that's going to own it? Are you the person that's going to eat it? Okay. Another thing that an economist said the other day, back to international stuff. When the U.S. sneezes, the world catches a cold. We affect the world so much. And when the world itself looks at how much we're out of control, and when the bad guys look at how easy it is to come into our country through the southern border, into Arizona, Texas, what do you think they're doing? Remember, we're still the evil empire to them. So I'm here to tell you that everything I see and talk about, we're predicting some really bad stuff in the next few years for this country. When Afghanistan fell, when we surrendered Afghanistan, I'd watch TV, and they said there was 200 or 300 American citizens still there. That's the biggest lie. How do I know that's a lie? We set up a talk outside MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. We're talking to 2,500 people today. 2,500 U.S. citizens today, trying to get them out. We got out about 5,000. 2,500. You're never going to see that on the news. I've been in Facebook jail so many times. I've got an orange jumpsuit. You know, but that's really what's happening. So it's what you think is happening, and what is really happening. So what my last thing to you is, we can take questions and talk, is trust your instincts. Don't be gaslighted, especially in your business. You've got to be out front. Law enforcement is, and this is a shame coming from me, a career law enforcement guy, has disengaged. And why should they engage? Because we beat them up. We want to defund the police. We want to do all these things. Not so much here, but around the country. If they, you know, it's like the guys at the border. They whip these poor people with their horses, and it was a total lie. That was on page 14. Another thing that Rumsfeld used to say that's apropos is that a lie travels all the way around the world before the truth gets out of bed. And that's what happened. They just now cleared them, just now a year later. But they were whipping them. The video even showed they didn't whip them. But yet, the country was gaslighted into thinking that these guys, the law enforcement people, whip the immigrants. So, with that, questions, comments, anything I can talk to you about? How many have? I know there's one person in the room that's armed. How many people here have a concealed permit? I know you do. Okay. If you don't have a concealed permit, why don't you? You live in Arizona. You don't need one here, do you? No. Good. Well, how many carry and train and stuff like that? Good. Yeah. If you ever need a pistol and you don't have a pistol, you probably won't ever need one again. That's part of the plan. Thank you. No questions. That's all I've got.
Well, what do you recommend for training, let's say the armed guards, or anyone in contract security, like as far as training goes, as a minimum, what's your recommendation?
Well, there's all kinds of training. I mean, do you buy the guns, or do the officers buy their guns?
The employee.
The employee buys them. Okay, so if you limit what they can carry, hopefully you don't let them carry a bear gun or a 22 or something like that. Yeah, I think you should double whatever the state requirement is at least. Your insurance company will love it. I can tell you, schools that we work with, private schools, and synagogues and churches, the insurance companies, we wrote a quick don't shoot policy, and we get them trained every quarter, and that reduced their insurance by 80%. Insurance companies really don't want to insure people with guns, do they? And so they punish it by hitting you with some big old fee. And if you've had a couple shootings, if you've had a wrong shooting, then you really get it. But I would train, and you've got, in terms of personal safety with a pistol, I don't know whether it's a personal philosophy, but whether you're in your home or on the street, you've got to survive until the police get there, right? These things are over in 30 seconds. You've got to survive 2-3 minutes at least. I've been involved in 4 shootings. 2 of them were fatal, and it's amazing what happens. It's not what you think. You're in audio shock. There's all kinds of mechanical things going on, but I would get one and train for all of you, especially if you're in the business, because you're going to be there sometime. I was asked a group like this, have you met your first responders? Anybody here met their first responders? I'm looking at them. You're it. You're your first responder. The cops are the second responder, and the fire department's the third responder. If somebody comes and assaults you, you're it. You can't even call the police. They're not going to come. And when they do come, they're minutes and minutes away, and it's over by then. It's over in 30 seconds. Have a plan. Have a plan to survive. Yes, sir.
All right, what's your take on, you've been talking most about the Afghan and the Ukrainian stuff up there. My specialty is I gaze toward Asia a lot, and kind of trying to watch, keep track of what they're doing. What's your take on what's going on right now? What's their next move?
What's going on where?
Asia, China specifically.
Wow. China's building the islands and they have been building the islands in the middle of the ocean. We're not doing anything. They're violating.
I just saw the news yesterday, with decommissioning that special operation boat that was sitting there training these guys.
They're violating international law, the seas, they have been. They're going to invade Taiwan. North Korea's firing rockets yesterday. Japan's worried about that. The North is probably going to invade the South. You know, it's anybody's game. Have you been? I went to I'm thinking about food shortage, by the way. We hear about it. Supply chain, right? If you're in the business, you guys are having trouble getting cameras, or are you guys having trouble? Okay. So I went to the Walgreens right up the street here and tried to get one of those Frappuccinos because we haven't had those in weeks. There's no toilet paper. In Miami, there's no bread. What's your plan?
Wait, food here is going to go up over 17% in the next 2 to 4 weeks in Arizona.
Yeah. So we're talking a recession, aren't we? We're really talking a recession. And you want to see a bunch of out of control people. Wait till normal people can't put food on the table and get milk for their babies. You want to see some wild stuff. Last year's riots were a day at the beach compared to what could happen. We saw that Hurricane Andrew in Miami. Right? It was a bad hurricane. Normal people were looting Publix for milk for their kids on day 2 or 3. So, never know. I know I'm thinking about this. I'm reading about it. I'm talking to people about it all the time. I can say that most Secret Service agents that I know of have food supply for their dry food supply for their family for 120 days. Speaking of the Secret Service, they shot somebody yesterday getting into the Peruvian ambassador's house, right? A month ago, a Pakistani group ran an undercover operation, a foreign intelligence operation on the Secret Service, right? On the First Lady's detail. They had money, they bought them presents. I think hopefully you read about that. It was outrageous. 4 years ago, a Pakistani guy became the IT person for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a member of Congress in Florida. His name was Awan. She introduced him to the Foreign Intelligence Committee, and he did the IT work for about 30 members of Commerce on the Intelligence Committee. He's from Pakistan. Like we don't have anybody here from this country that's a U.S. citizen that can work on IT. They should have called Felipe. But yeah, so that's what happened. That's that normalcy bias that really worries me when we're doing stuff like that. And he got charged with some real estate thing, and he fled. But he fled with the contents of the members of Congress computers. And they're not going to raise hell about that because they're embarrassed. So that's sort of, if you just look at that movement, if you put everything together, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Secret Service having undercover guys work on them, the IT guy with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, supply chain issues, and you put all that together, I think it's not good in the near term. And then you put in inflation and the upcoming recession. I think it's a potential issue. So I'm just here not to depress you. I'm here to just make you think, and this is an opportunity for us, I think, to have a good plan. Thank you.
How's local law enforcement? How are they preparing for any potential riots?
Look, they're doing the same thing depending on the jurisdiction. Law enforcement can be really prepared. They can have the field force units, all that stuff, all that good equipment. But if the city council or the mayor, like in Minneapolis, says, it's okay, let them take the police station and burn the police station. That was the green light to everybody else to do what they did during the riots. So yeah, I think they're thinking about this. We have these JTTF meetings and we have these secure webinars, and it's frightening what people are concerned about. I've told you about 10% of it. But these international events really do affect us. But don't have normalcy bias, meaning don't think that since I'm honest and I think everything's okay, don't think out a week. Think out a month, 2 months, a year. Think about food. how are you going to feed your family?
You do a lot of work with synagogues and different.
Yeah, we fly around, do tons of work with synagogues. There's a bunch of, it's really interesting. One quick story. There are two types of synagogues. There's the ones that are realists, and there are the ones that are in normalcy bias. So we do training, and had a rabbi call me like a month ago, and he said, "You're going to be so proud of me." This guy was in Atlanta. We had your training, and sure enough, this guy was in the synagogue. This guy came in on Saturday, and he sat in the front row, and we did what you said. We put somebody right next to him, and he watched him the whole time. I said, "Well, what do you do?" Well, he said he was homeless, but he was clean. He smelled good. He had cologne. He was all that. He was an Arab guy. He had like a hat on and everything. He said he wanted to come to a conversion class to Judaism. I said, okay. He said, and he had his iPhone out. He was taking pictures. I said, really? I said, what did the police say? He said, what do you mean? I said, you didn't call the police? He said, no. He said he was going to come back to a conversion class, convert from being a Muslim to a Jew. I said, did he come, Rabbi? No. So there are two types of synagogues in the country. Those who have had probes like that, that's a probe, and those who don't know they've had probes. But I can tell you that in Miami, easily one a week at a Hebrew school. We have like 32 Hebrew schools, and all the security directors are connected. So we're sending photos back and forth. Pizza delivery people trying to get in, trying to do a red team, trying to penetrate the perimeter. That happens all the time. So, but they have normalcy bias. It can't happen to me. Philadelphia happened, right? They went into the synagogue in Philadelphia, shot those people. Every synagogue in the country went, we have to do certain things. That lasted about a week until they realized, they had to pay. Then we wrote federal grants for a bunch of them, and they got $100,000 here, $100,000 there. Thank God they had to spend them on something, cameras or something. But they're not going to spend their own money. They're going to pay the rabbi, by the way. Most rabbis are paid between $800,000 and $900,000 a year, but they don't want to put a $39 camera on. Yeah. I'm preaching to the choir now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to just bounce something off, and you started to get into it before, so I just want to open that door further. On the issue of whether you should have armed or unarmed guards in the workplace in terms of workplace shootings and violence. The old, first of all, a lot of guard companies avoid it by having the observe and report policy, which I always abhor. I refuse to work for a guard company that uses observe and report. I think the client's looking for you for help, your first responder. Yeah, absolutely, dial 911, but while you're waiting for the cavalry, we always took the attitude we had to try to hold the fort, and we had to try to minimize the damage until the police would get there. In the beginning of my consulting career, the thinking was, if you really wanted to play it safe, you would have unarmed guards. So if your guards don't have guns, they're not going to shoot anybody. They may get shot, but they're not going to shoot anybody, and you won't end up in court. On the other hand, I developed the theory, and I've gone to major national companies. I've been flown back to corporate headquarters of national banks and talked to their board of directors about this subject. And I came around to advising them that I said, in reality, you have to decide and talk to your legal counsel. But the reality of violence in the workplace shootings especially, is like you say, they're over, maybe not 30 seconds, but they're over in 2 or 3 minutes. Whatever they are, they're over before the cops get there. And it's all done. So I said, my attitude is you have to decide how much you really want to protect your employees, how much you really care about it. Because if you really care about your employees and not wanting them to get killed, your security officer should be well-trained, well-paid, and all that. But they need to be able to be armed and respond to it, because they're there, and no shooting, workplace shooting, can be stopped in the first minute or two, except if you have armed guards. So I'm almost finished up, but in fact, I eventually came to the point of advising my clients that, again, the thinking was, well, boy, if you want to play it safe legally, have unarmed guards. I said, I'm waiting for the chance, and I was an expert witness like you in court cases. I came to the opinion that I would have jumped at the chance, almost not get paid if I could, to jump at the chance to argue that if you don't have armed guards and your employees get shot and your employees' relatives sue you, I want to testify that you were in error and you're liable for the death of your employees because you didn't have armed guards. So that really, by having armed guards, I think that you're safer than having unarmed guards, because you could be sued for not providing proper protection, knowing, as we do today, that unarmed guards can't do anything about workplace shootings except get shot. That's my speech.
No,
I want to hear your feedback.
I agree with about 99% of what you said. Unarmed security is not really security. Unarmed security is home monitors.
Right.
Now, that being said, there are a couple companies out there that we query when we do assessments. G4S is one. G4S in Florida instructed their people in an active shooter not to engage. Not to engage. They're trained, they got guns, but they don't engage. So what's the plan? Their plan was to, in writing, circle the perimeter and wait for the cops or something like that. Meanwhile, in the school, people are getting shot.
Right.
So I recommended that those clients fire them, and they did immediately. And we brought in people that would engage. A couple little companies here and there, but they trained their people and they would engage. Look, it's like with the law enforcement guys at that school in Florida at Parkland. If you put the badge on, if you're not going to engage, go sell insurance or something. That's what they pay you to do, is to run into harm's way. But it's oversexed. So armed security is a deterrent. Not inside a bank, at the front, at the desk, talking to the teller, having a cappuccino. Standing out front,
right.
That's a deterrent. Standing out front. If you have to draw your gun, you're in that bottom 5% of survivability. When we're protecting somebody, if we ever had to go to gun, our plan has failed, right? Our perimeter's failed, everything's failed. Somebody got in close enough where we had to draw a gun, but it's not so in a bank or in a school. But yeah, unarmed security, I wouldn't say it's security. Now, if somebody says, I don't want armed, if you propose armed, and they say, well, our legal counsel, then you know what that means? That means they want to protect their fund. And they're hiring you, so if something happens, they can blame it on you. So you should protect yourself first. We recommended armed security. It's only $2 more an hour, or whatever it is, $3 more an hour, and maybe you give them some crime stats or something like that. So you're giving them that hot potato. And if something happens, their lawyer's going to go nuts. Your person's probably going to sue them or you if they get shot. So that's just my thought. But I agree with you. It's pennies when you think about it. If they're trained and if they're going to engage, and if they know how to engage.
Yeah, that's all part of the better pay, better training.
Oh yeah. So what does it cost to train 10 guys, for example? It costs maybe, with ammo and everything, 9mm ammo a day at the range, 10 people, probably $200 a person. Ballpark, if you think about it. Fees and ammo's now is a little cheaper. It's like now 9mm ammo's probably $400 a case. It was $700 a case during COVID. So, something to think about. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Wayne, thanks for coming out.
Oh, my pleasure.
Sharing your thoughts today. I liked hearing a couple of those things from Secretary Rumsfeld. I actually got to meet him in Iraq in 2006.
Yeah.
One of his visits over there. Really good human being. It was neat for you to share some insight. You talked a little bit about relationships with law enforcement. You didn't go too into it. The question that I agree with what your recommendation was do that. We established those contacts. A general manager a few years ago told me the first time I meet the police chief should not be at an incident scene. And that's always stuck with me. I really like that attitude. But with what's going on in the law enforcement environment today, do you have any advice? Because we have great relationships with precinct and the battalion fires at that level, but any advice you could give and how we could, and I work for a proprietary company, but for everybody, what should we be doing to expand these relationships now?
What I do is I tell facilities to invite law enforcement to come and train. have them run the schools, synagogues, churches, corporate places, have them run the dogs after hours in the place, develop that relationship. Have that SWAT team come train in your building. Why? Because if something happens, they're already going to be there. They're going to know. Give them the drawings. Give them a CAD drawing of the building. Give them access to the cameras so they can dial in the cameras from outside. If you've got an active situation going, they can, from their cars, they can dial them up and see. Have them trained. Show them your people. So if you have armed security, have them meet all the armed security guys and do what the Israelis do. Tape the slides on your guns with a colored tape. Why is that? So, like Israelis, you have an event with Israelis, they say the color of the day is blue. The gun comes out, people look at the gun, it's called weapons fixation, they don't look at the person. They sure don't look at a little badge here or a little badge here. They're going to shoot the guy without the tape. So train with the tape. So let them know that you're going to have like yellow tape. You get that reflective tape that they put on police cars so it glows. Put it on both sides of the slide and on the top. So if your guy pulls out the pistol, the cops aren't going to shoot him. Because they're running, they're responding with adrenaline going to a shooting. They see somebody with a gun, they're probably going to shoot the guy with a gun, even if he's in uniform. So, and then train the people, train the security people on what to do if there's a shooting. So maybe they engage and they hear the sirens. They need to put that gun at low ready and wave at the police officer. Say over here. If they go, it's a problem. Just my point. Thanks. That's all I got.
Well, I'm sorry, I keep asking questions. Have you had many conversations of cyber-related with any of your clients, or is that not an issue?
With banks, we're seeing this business compromise stuff going on all the time. I've got an IT guy that does all that stuff, but banks are getting, the client gets compromised, their email gets compromised, and so the bad guy then tells the bank to do a wire using that email to someplace else. And so that happens all the time. If it's not, for me, if it's not violent related or an assessment, we typically don't do it. But there's a ton of that stuff.
We've been running into more and more, this is speaking on the technology side, more and more IT folks that are maintaining the cameras, the access control, that software side. What challenges does that present to you when you're making your recommendations to the client?
Well, remember they want to cut corners, so a lot of clients will say, our IT guys will put up the cameras, don't worry. And we're going to run them on the same system instead of separately. You guys have seen this. Or I go to an IT room and you look up and there's a sprinkler head in there. Right? That was a closet that they turned into an IT room. So that tells you right away, ooh, they got problems. How often do you back up? Where do you back up? Well, we back up right there. So. But again, it's money versus. So I was going, look, if you got X number of dollars, protect the people instead of the other side. I only testify for the defense. So I've never testified. I testified once as a plaintiff expert on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting, the one in Parkland. All the other times I testified on besides the defense.
How could you do that?
Well,
when I was an expert witness, you were always told you had to do both sides, not 50-50.
I just decided that. I just because most of the plaintiff's work I see are people that want to make some money, and so Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was different. 17 kids killed. They let half of them bleed to death, so that was easy. And I can't talk about the settlement, but there's a whole lot of zeros, way beyond 7 zeros that all those family got. Now that doesn't bring their kids back, but yeah. So. But sometimes I have to tell the client, look, there's nothing I can say.
But the opposing attorney will tear you apart and that you're biased on one side or the other, plaintiff or defense, if you only do defense or
yeah,
only
they try that. I just say, a lot of times I tell the client, don't list me as an expert because you screwed up. And then it's privileged. I can't, until they name me as an expert, it's privileged. So a lot of times I say, look, you guys, it's so bad, you just better write them a check. I can't help you.
So something that you can speak to Stoneman Douglas where they went wrong, what the situation was, what the police could have done to prevent.
Okay, so you know the story, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Parkland shooting. Nicholas Cruz was in there shooting, and he's on trial now forever, and 17 kids died. They had an assessment by a former Secret Service guy 6 months before. They didn't follow it. Broward Sheriff's Office, school resource officers didn't engage. They hid. They heard the shots and they hid and didn't go in. The FBI call center knew about the guy. He was killing cats in his backyard. People were sending in video. He was doing a bunch of things. He was kicked out of school for talking about killing people. He sent an email, I'm going to be a school shooter. He came to school with a rifle, and everybody knew he wasn't allowed to go in. And one of the groundskeepers saw him going in with a rifle and had a radio and didn't call it in. But they had no plan, too. Half of those kids bled to death from arterial wounds. They just let them stay in there. And Broward Sheriff's Office commander on the scene, even though it was already over, they didn't know where he was. The cameras, remember, were 15 minutes off. So when they looked at the cameras, it said that he was still in the school. He was at McDonald's already. So they didn't go in and engage. That's the bottom line. They didn't engage, and the kids bled to death.
What about Virginia Tech? Virginia Tech was a terrible example of the school ignoring at least 20 red flags.
Yeah. There's more in this one with Nicholas Cruz than I've ever seen. He sent them a note. I want to be the next school shooter. He sent them an email that said that. Neighbors are taking pictures of him skinning live cats in the backyard. Walking in with a rifle. I mean, it's just outrageous. They didn't lock. If they had locked the doors, like the Secret Service told him to do, he wouldn't have gone in. He didn't have a key. They didn't lock the doors. They didn't have a lockdown plan. I mean, it was just terrible. Anyway, thank you.
That's another,
Here we go.
I keep doing that to you, right? That's another issue with, speaking to clients and wanting to do security on a budget. I've heard, what's your expression? I've heard you say it.
Budget-driven security will always fail.
Yeah. So when it comes to, like, let's say, school, I mean, we were in Florida at the time for that. And it's not just the shooting, but now it's all these kids that have, PTSD and have all these issues, and it's based on what they saw because they weren't prepared.
The thing for us in our business is don't let them hang you out to dry. Don't let them say, well, he didn't tell us. And you don't have to go, I mean, let's say if you're a guard supplier, for example, if you supply uniformed guards, and you recommend, they want 10 and you recommend 25, they're going to say, okay, you're trying to sell us on it. So have them bring in an outside person that can, that looks like a sales deal, but armed versus unarmed. I would send them an email someplace with a read receipt that says, well, based on you being a bank and there's been an uptick in bank robberies in the area, we really recommend armed guards, and our armed guards are good because they train twice a year and they're proficient in firearms. Whatever you use it as sales, but give them the hot potato because their lawyer's sure going to put it on you. Hey, wait, we're a bank, we're a school. We hired you. You're the professional. How come you guys didn't tell us this stuff? We hired a security company to protect us. You didn't tell us you needed 10 more people. You didn't tell us they should be armed. You didn't tell us all this other stuff. Yes, sir.
I have a quick question from someone in the meeting. She's at home watching. I use drones in private investigations, but not in security yet. But her question is, how do you see the increased use of drones as a security measure without going over the breach of privacy and forth?
Well, I mean, unless the drone's recording voice, I don't know what the privacy is. So drones aren't flying around the bathroom, right? They're outside. There's no expectation of privacy. Where I worry about drones are bad guy drones. Right? There's a company here in town, a police officer in, maybe you all know him, in Tempe, who developed a drone about 3 or 4 years ago, a device to take down a drone, countermeasures for a drone. Are you familiar with those things? Mm-hmm. Those are, the Secret Services use them. It's like a device they point at the drone and they change the frequency and the drone comes to them. Pretty cool stuff. But no, I don't think there's a privacy concern with the drone. Now, any drone pilot, right, you have to have a license to fly a drone. You can't go flying over somebody's backyard and look at the kids in the pool. But for security, the Miami Beach Hebrew School has a drone. Somebody gets near the fence, they launch the drone, they go out, they talk to them through the drone. Hey, what are you doing here? So huge deterrent for security and investigations. Of course, yes, sir.
So to speak to that real quick, because I almost have my license for commercial drone use. So I mean, technically, you can go get a $6,000 drone with 4K Hasselblad camera. To do it commercially, you're going to need a license. But I know some buddies of mine in Liberty County, they just had a shooting, and as we was speaking to, half of those children bleeding out. I think drones would be a big help for that. Anybody who's maybe not been in combat, or I know we got some combat vets, or anybody who hasn't been in law enforcement, how often do you see a suspect go down? They're obviously not just going to go and approach that suspect. They're going to check first. So they had an incident where they had a guy barricaded in the house. They actually put a drone through the front door. So the person he had stabbed was bleeding, and they actually were able to get in there real quick because the drone confirmed that the suspect was out of the fight. So they were able to get in there and render first aid to the victim quicker, because who knows? I mean, they're going to stack up, they're going to get behind a shield, they're going to take time. Maybe that person bleeds out. So drones definitely, I can see as being a worry for the bad guys, but I think there's some really good life-saving measures that they can really expedite how fast law enforcement can get in there with. I mean, law enforcement, that's just a risk you take. The veteran, that's a risk you take. But they can get people into situations a lot faster and hopefully, save people from succumbing to wounds because they're waiting. Like, someone knows maybe if they thrown a drone in there, they would have been able to figure out where it was clear. Maybe so many people would blood out.
When you were in the military, did you see the bumblebee drones? Have you seen those?
No. I didn't see
The
those.
bumblebees, they'll fly them right through a window and record back a mile away. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, they've got sound and video.
Our smallest were about
yeah.
big.
These are bugs.
So.
We've gotten birds. They'll sit on the line and watch. It's just incredible. But anyway, drones are good. The other thing, preparing. If you have armed security, do they carry tourniquets?
Yeah, we mentions.
They carry an IFAC, but do they carry a tourniquet?
No.
Okay. So it's no coincidence that every police officer you see in the country has a gun, has a tourniquet. Tourniquet's for him, typically. They all have it. So if he gets shot, they take his tourniquet and do it, but they could use it. So tourniquets are, the best is a company called Soft T, S-O-F-T, inch-and-a-half tourniquet. They're $30. So the expert witness in the plaintiff's case might say, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if they just spent $35, the plaintiff's child would be alive today. Imagine that. So spend the money and then use it for marketing. Our people are trained in stop the bleed, CPR, AED, emergency first aid, all these things. Use it as marketing. Most security companies aren't like that. Just my thought. That's what I would do. I don't have enough hair left or nerves left to ever own a security company. So God bless you for all those headaches. But you can only imagine. Thank you.
Well, I lost my picture. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Leo, did you want to speak to?
Well, I can just tell you that we had 162 participants in attendance, and we wrote 9 checks for one of the largest amounts that I've seen since I've been helping out for at least 9 years. And that's $1,750 for 9 families. We just got our first thank you card in the mail from one of those families today. So it was really good. Thank you for everybody that participated. Parking, just so you know, you have to go put the one ticket that you have in, and then you put this ticket after it. So whoever needs those, they can see me after that.
Is there any further business? Does anyone want to bring anything up, ask any questions? It's a short meeting.
We going
I'm
back
gonna
to
try to
eight.
go to the Flint for happy hour. No, we're mad at the AZ right now.
And where is Flint?
The Flint is right across, it's in this Esplanade. Well, we can all walk over together.
We'll all go together. Whoever wants to grab a drink, we can just walk over there together. If there's no further questions, I always have to read this. Do I have a first motion to adjourn? Meeting? Sorry. So moved. Okay.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Appreciate the